As I said in my video ranking the top 10 best episodes of Better Call Saul, this is my favorite show of all time. So now it's time to rank these seasons from great to perfect. I love all of these seasons, but something has to end at the bottom. I've also decided to split season 6 into A and B so I can give separate thoughts on the extended season length. Let me know your rankings down below, and let's start with number 7, season 1. Season 1 of Better Call Saul grips you. From the moment you're dropped into this world of Jimmy McGill, you are bombarded with iconic scenes, montages, and lines. The show's slower and more methodical pace in comparison to Breaking Bad is established from the cold open. A cerebral venture, not for the impatient. But there are plenty of show-stopping highs in this season, particularly in the episode 5-0. This plays almost like a Mike origin story, giving us so much to fill the gaps of this character. His story intertwines with our main protagonist seamlessly, and remains an episode in my top 10 of the series. Other highlights include the episode Pimento, the scamming montage with Marco, and the lawyerly clash with Tuco Salamanca. My gripes with the season, if you want to call them that, are simple. One is that while I do love the episode Mijo, and the way Jimmy has to lawyer his way through Judge Tuco, bringing the death sentence down to broken legs, it feels a little bit uneven. I wouldn't go so far as to say the show leans on Breaking Bad in this season, but it certainly wanted to kickstart the series with a bang, so they took an explosive member of the Breaking Bad cast and put him into the first couple of episodes. Personally, I was more invested in characters we delved into more later in Better Call Saul, like Nacho, over characters like Tuco, and we get more of that in the later seasons. And while this season does have some of the best episodes with Iho, 5-0, Pimento, and Marco, it also does have some that are a little bit weaker, like Bingo and Alpine Shepherd Boy. I think the show was still building into what it would become, and the showrunners found a completely new path separate to Breaking Bad in the following seasons. Some of the style of the show is improved on later seasons, partially due to production value and partially due to showrunner experience. The best episode for me of the season is 5-0, and the worst would be Bingo. Number 6, season 2. While I understand that season 2 is the weakest for many, I find it a little bit more consistent than season 1, and I commend it fully for embracing the Better Call Saul style and the new characters present here. We get a lot more Kim and a lot more Nacho. A common complaint of this season is that it is a partial retread of season 1, and I can't agree with this, but there is enough unique Better Call Saul sparkle to keep me smiling throughout. There's nothing that floors me like 5-0, but there are plenty of great moments here, such as Mike's confrontation with Tuco, the Jimmy getting fired from Davis and Maine montage, the increased use of the camera crew, the climax of the Chuck and Jimmy drama, plenty of fantastic scamming, and more. It's pretty easy to lump season 1 and 2 together in a sort of mega season because they do play pretty similarly, but I wouldn't necessarily say that as a complaint. I enjoyed establishing these lower stakes of this slow burn show and really taking my time with these characters. That's what made their eventual downfall so impactful. Moments like Howard getting blasted in the head hit so hard because, well, we've been busy watching him and Jimmy bicker for seasons in a row. This type of explosive consequence seems all the more jarring and disturbing because of the foundation set by these two classic seasons. And I'm more than elated with what we got. While I can't necessarily match the payoff of the more bombastic seasons, it set a foundation with which to build all of the future with, and it did it in a fun, inventive, and engaging way. The best episode of the season for me is Gloves Off, and the worst is Amarillo. Number 5, season 4. When I initially set off to do this ranking, I thought season 4 would rest comfortably in the bottom 1 or 2. My reasoning was that there was a Chuck-sized hole in the show, and it essentially has to reposition itself. While I still think this is partially true, I definitely overlooked some of the fantastic developments, moments, and episodes in this season. I only really realized how underrated it was when I recently rewatched it. I stand by the fact that the show has to do some extended, deliberate shuffling in the wake of Chuck's suicide, but it's more than worth it. One of the most interesting components of the season is Howard's decline, and Jimmy's response to it. Nearly all of this plays off screen, allowing the viewer to fill in the gaps. We see Howard initially in shock, and then again in distress, then again in a clear bout of insomnia, depression, and survivor's guilt. And we see Jimmy allow him to take the fall for his own malevolence. Winter is one of my top 5 episodes of the series, and it's packed with so many unforgettable scenes from start to finish. Despite the fact that this season has to set up so much for the later moments of the show, it contains so many satisfying payoffs itself. Mike's storyline hits its absolute peak here, and the montage work throughout the season can't be overstated. Pinata is an underrated gem of an episode, and we generally get to see Saul really venturing out into the world of criminals that we know he'll become more accustomed to down the line. While the show doesn't hit its peak stride here, it's more than on its way as we migrate into the final and perfect stretch of the show. The best episode is Winner of the Season and the worst is Smoke. Number 4, Season 3. I mentioned this in my video ranking the top 10 best episodes of Better Call Saul, but this show is essentially divided into 3 distinct segments in my mind. It ends with this Gene saga, preceded by the Howard saga, preceded by the Chuck saga. Season 3 plays as a finale to the first era of the show, one defined by brotherly love and spite, jealousy and subversion. And it's one that sets into motion the character pieces that lead Jimmy down his entire life's journey. There's a certain whimsicality to the first 2 seasons that is lost at this point. There are brotherly disputes, but at the core of it, Chuck and Jimmy do really love each other and care about each other. While this may be true deep within each of these characters, the veneer of pleasantries are swiftly removed and the claws come out. Both Jimmy and Chuck pull out all the stops to tear each other down. This isn't Chuck not wanting Jimmy to be an associate at HHM, it's Chuck desperately grasping at the hope that he can revoke Jimmy's ability to practice law permanently. It's not Jimmy refusing to take care of his spiteful brother, but him actively bringing his estranged wife to cause a nervous breakdown in front of colleagues and peers. It's about challenging his very perception of reality in a humiliating public spectacle. Because season 1 and 2 both tread in similarly light territory, the depth this season goes in takes off the fun and makes it serious, with serious consequences. Lantern and chicanery are obvious highlights of the season, but others include slip as well as fall. Beyond the Chuck and Jimmy drama, this season does have some great scenes and payoff with Mike and Nacho and Kim, but obviously the focal point of the season is the brotherly battle, and it pays off in spades. With how pivotal Chuck was to these first 3 seasons, it's hard to imagine they were able to reposition the show so effectively down the line. He really was the main antagonist, and then he's gone. Best episode of the season, chicanery of course. Worst episode, off-brand. Number 3, Season 5. My biggest praise for Season 5 is the absolute pristine consistency it has. From beginning to end, there is hardly a weaker moment to notice. While it might not have as many jaw-droppingly stunning episodes as those closer to the finale, it is the most consistent season. As I rewatched the show, I assigned every episode a rating from 1 to 100, and not a single episode of this season dipped below a 90 out of 100. It also has the second best 3-episode stretch of the series in my opinion, with Bagman, Bad Choice Road, and Something Unforgivable, which almost plays as an extended movie-going experience. The theatrical cinematography of Bagman, the contemplative Bad Choice Road, and the bombastic Something Unforgivable all provide something unique to this interwoven masterpiece. Season 5 also saw Better Call Saul treading that much closer to Breaking Bad in terms of scope, themes, action, and suspense. Bagman even fits with Breaking Bad in terms of setting, as Vince Gilligan returns to direct the southwestern United States desert escapades. But in the midst of all the intense insanity, this season still manages to bring forward a sense of the earlier, lighthearted joviality. Yet, although the scenes are full of vibrancy, fun, and life, there's a hint of cruelty. Jimmy and Kim are going a little too far. Their scams come closer and closer to maliciousness as they tear down Kevin Wachtel's father and threaten him, all under the guise of benevolence. Lalo is in full Lalo mode throughout the season, and Nacho really becomes a key player in the show, held under the thumb of Gus and the Salamancas. A hidden gem in this season is Mike's devolution after the killing of Werner. So often, in lesser shows, after a traumatic event, the characters seem to move on within episodes, or even moments. But the inner turmoil Mike faces after killing his friend leads him down a similarly destructive path as he's been on before. Drinking and picking fights, he loses track of what he does all of this for, and his journey to recovery is often overlooked, but it is pensive and poignant. Additionally, the show has fully reached its peak level of glamour. The show looks amazing, and with Saul and the cartel and full-on Breaking Bad levels of crazy, there is so much color and life that we're allowed to watch jump off the screen in just about every scene. Best episode of this season is definitely Bagman, and the worst is Magic Man, but still a great one. Number 2, Season 6B. So the decision to divide Season 6 into 2 parts wasn't easy, but I would have placed Season 6 in first no matter what. So it doesn't really matter. But they are so distinct that I think it's worth talking about them separately and ranking them separately. I'll get my only complaints out of the way first. While I do appreciate the artistic decision to skip past events of Breaking Bad and leap headfirst into the black and white world of Gene, I couldn't help but feel severe whiplash from the drastic change of pace. We are left off from plan and execution to point and shoot and then fun and games, which is in my opinion the best 3-episode stretch of the show. Each one is high octane for completely different reasons, but we'll focus on the part 2 sections first. Point and Shoot is perhaps even more thrilling and tense than any episode in the Breaking Bad universe, filled with action, tension, disgust, intrigue, and twists. Then Fun and Games is a brutal character study, effectively navigating the wake of a traumatic event. Kim leaves Jimmy in one of the most brutally acted scenes of the show. And then we flash to Saul, Breaking Bad period. Then we flash immediately to Gene scams. There is a certain charm to returning to the lightheartedness of season 1 with the Gene and Jeff scams and Nippy, but Fun and Games and the preceding episodes set up some sort of exploration of the Breaking Bad timeline. For us to go from the highest energy the show has to offer and then immediately go to the lowest and focus on introducing new characters, it did take some time to adjust. I have not rewatched it since, but I would consider Nippy one of the weaker episodes of the show, but it is entirely necessary to set up the dominoes that will collapse in the final 3 masterpieces. While I enjoyed a lot of the episode, it was jarring in its placement to me personally. So all of that was to say, I would call every episode in this half a masterpiece outside of Nippy, and that's the only reason this one doesn't place above 6A. Perhaps on rewatches this could change, but it's where I have it for now. But why is Season 6B so great? Well, I already mentioned how much I loved the first 2 episodes, but particularly Fun and Games. It's really the ending of Better Call Saul in some ways, while the remaining 4 are an added epilogue. I love the ending for every single character in 609, from the extended conversation with Gus and the waiter, to Jimmy and Kim's breakup, to not just Father confronting Mike. The opening montage is also one of the best of the series. Then we have the interwoven flashbacks of Breaking Bad throughout the final 3 episodes. The understated but masterfully crafted waterworks is underappreciated by the community, and Saul Gone added just enough freshness and twist to keep my jaw on the floor throughout the runtime. I doubt another show will ever come this close to a perfect ending, and every time I research more, I fall more in love with this show. Breaking Bad is a show where I loved the experience, but with Better Call Saul I find myself loving it even more after the experience. It's thought-provoking in the least pretentious way possible, and wraps everything up with the most splendid bow imaginable. Best episode of the season is Saul Gone, with Waterworks very close behind, and the worst is Nippy. Number 1, Season 6A. One thing I neglected to mention was how Season 6B does feel like a slight deviation from what Better Call Saul is. When I think about what is quintessential Better Call Saul, my mind instantly goes to the first half of Season 6. While the second half is a perfect collapse of all that was built, the first half is the culmination of everything they had been striving to create for the first 5 seasons. It has consequence, fun, cartel shenanigans, sacrifice, and deliberate character development following a series of intentional choices. The first 3 episodes are a build-up and the finale of the Nacho storyline that really has been simmering in the background from the first couple of seasons. These 3 episodes have some of the most tense moments from the entire show for me, as the mystery of what is happening to Nacho unfolds. I feel the sweltering heat, the stench, the dust particles clouding my vision and filling my lungs. His paranoia takes front seat and we get a perfect send-off to a beloved character. And where to begin with Howard's scamming and eventual consequences? And where to even begin with the Howard scamming and eventual demise? The worst episode of the season is likely Black and Blue, and even then it has some of the most enjoyable sequences the show has to offer, albeit slightly inconsequential, and it has the best climax and payoff of the show in my opinion with the perfect episode, Plan and Execution. There are constant twists and turns, everything matters here. There's no wasted time, no dead ends, and each scene is brimming with life, intrigue, and importance. I know there were initially some detractors due to the slower pace of the show during the first half of Season 6, but to that I must say that has been a staple of the show since its inception. I think there may have been 2 things at play in this case. One is that people are not used to the weekly format. The way Better Call Saul sets up pieces slowly does not lend itself to an extended period of consumption, as people might get impatient and forgetful. The second is people might have assumed we didn't have enough time left in the show for it to really pay off. We were in the last season and we're still pulling petty scams against Howard. Thankfully, I trusted the showrunners and they proved that they were more than capable of landing the plane. In any case, I still find this as quintessential Saul in my favorite segment of the show. The best episode of the season is Plan and Execution, of course, and the worst is Black and Blue. How about you guys? Where would you rank the seasons? Let me know down below, and thank you for watching. Peace.